So what was his diagnosis?
Well, we're talking about my brother, Kurt, who was 6 years younger than me, just to give you a little background on him. He was put in the hospital when he was about 19, and they diagnosed him with OCD, which is called obsessive compulsive disorder. Through the next 10 years, he didn't have a therapist, and he, I think, eventually was diagnosed as bipolar, although I'm not sure that was official, but there were definitely signs to show that that would have been one of the mood disorders that he had.
And did he have depression?
He did have depression, but that's a really broad term, and I think his other disorders caused his depression, from what he told me, because like he told me, it was really hard to live in his own head, and so that made him sad. Yeah.
And so you said he was put in the hospital when he was 19, so he started having symptoms of a mood disorder later in life?
It got serious later in life, or at 19 is when he first showed signs that we felt were outside of our ability to handle. They went far beyond what seemed normal. There was a person who was, I forget his name, the Night Stalker in LA, where we all lived at the time. And that person was taking people's lives, and Kurt got really obsessed with thinking about what causes that and what causes people to hurt each other. And so, hi Hazel. And so, come here, Hazel. So that began an onset of him being he started separating from himself at that point. But I would say that there were things, he got really caught up in numbers. He would drop a bar of soap and he would count the tiles down to the floor. And if it was an odd number of tiles, he would pick up the soap and drop it from an even number. And that is a symptom of obsessive compulsive disorder, which when we looked back when he was younger, there were signs. He was a very, very neat kid at a very young age, very particular about everything in his room, where everything went. And say he got one drop of water on his shirt, he would change his shirt. He was also very empathic, so he was very, very sensitive and picked up on things and people's moods. So I think those are symbols of a disorder that maybe were around later in life, earlier in life, but he was actually a very, very happy, funny kid, even past the point of when he did get diagnosed.
So what was it like being close to someone with this disorder?
Well, we were very close, and of course I didn't feel like he had a disorder. And then when he turned 19 and he was put in the hospital, I would drive for hours across LA to go sit in on the group meetings and the family meetings with him and meet a lot of the other kids. That was really hard, but it was also fascinating, being around therapists and people who understood the disorders and helped channel these kids into a way of thinking that suited them better than the way they already thought. Some of these kids were ill-behaved kids, just they didn't really have a disorder, they were just ill-behaved. So Kurt didn't quite fit into that always. His was more something he couldn't help. It was pretty painful, and as life went on, it got more painful because it would cause problems between us at times, because he got so caught up and wrapped up in his mind and his kind of irrational thoughts.
And what type of treatment did he receive?
Well, the treatment, I don't even remember. In the hospital, there was a lot of therapy. I don't think at that time he was put on medication. Later in life, when he got closer to 30, he was put on medication and several different medications, and they would affect him differently. He got really swollen from some of them and put on weight. Some of them numbed him out where he wasn't really there, so he wasn't his funny self anymore. He didn't have the depression as much, but his personality kind of disappeared, and that's what the medications do. And then towards the end of his life, in his last week, he was actually, I want to say he was on Paxil, but I think that's what he was on. And they upped his dosage right before he died, like several days before. That was very depressing for him because he didn't want to be on anything for the rest of his life. And I also believe they know now that medications like this, what they do is they take away the part of us, like say if we wanted to commit suicide, there's a part of us that filters that and would stop us from doing it. But when you're on medication for depression, those that medication numbs you, but it also numbs that filter that would keep you from taking your own life. So there's a lot of studies that show that suicides go up with people that are on these medications. So I do believe that his dosage being upped had something to do with his ability at that point to take his own life, which is what happened in the end.